and welcome to Season 4, Episode 42 of Logicast, the AWS News Podcast brought to you by Logicata. I'm Karl Robinson, CEO and co-founder of Logicata. The perceptive of you who watch the video feed of this podcast may notice I'm not in my usual shed. I am actually on location in a lovely apartment in Madrid today, not far from Mad 15, as AWS's nearest office is called, although I think there are 3 AWS offices in Madrid where I'll be visiting tomorrow, and the hotel next door for an AWS SMB summit. So, yeah, not my usual background. I'm joined today, as always, by lead cloud engineer Jon Goodall. How are you doing today, Jon?
Can you see me? Am I here this time?
You're there. Yeah, you're not a pulsating avatar of me, as you were at the end of the last episode, which was rather disconcerting. But yeah,
It must be something to do with our tier, because I didn't turn the camera on and it showed your avatar in my face area again. Must be something to do with the tier, because I'm logged in as me and then I jump into the team and then it does that. I've got no idea.
Yeah, it's very odd. I mean, we do have individual logins, so yeah, not quite sure why it mixes us up, but there we go. The joys of multimedia, remote recording from international locations. And speaking of international,
I am, however, just to finally, yes, I am, however, enjoying my brand new mouse, because I'm such a nerd. I bought myself a new one. Black Friday sales are kicking in already.
What mouse have you bought yourself then, Jon?
MX Master 3S.
We haven't gone for the vertical version of it.
One. No, that's what my wrist is still okay.
Yeah. When you get to my age, you might need to opt for the vertical version. If I try and use a horizontal mouse now, I find it quite painful, actually. But
that's going to turn into a very not safe for podcast conversation very quickly.
Absolutely. Anyway, speaking of remote international recording locations, we have the pleasure of a guest today, Sujal Shaw, fellow AWS community builder, joining us from India. How are you doing today, Sujal?
Hey, hi, Karl. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, very well. I'm enjoying Madrid. It's sunny but cold, which I wasn't expecting. I thought it was always warm in Spain, but it's not today.
It's November.
It is November, yeah. But yeah, I was expecting it to be warmer than the UK, which it isn't, because I think the UK is actually unseasonably warm for this time of year, as they say. But anyway, so Sujal, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mentioned you're a fellow AWS community builder, so tell us what you do for the AWS community, perhaps what you do for a living, and whereabouts you're based.
So myself, Sujal Shaw, I am a AWS community builder. Apart from this, I am also a founder and director of a Craftiest Solutions Private Limited, which is basically an education platform where we teach students about cloud, Web3, etc.
Cool. So how come you come to be in the AWS Community Builder Program? Which category are you under?
I am actually in serverless category.
Same as Jon.
I came to know about the AWS from the regional committee of India.
Cool.
There's a lot of user groups in India. There's community days. There's all sorts. But big country, so it's probably hard to get to one still.
So yeah, two AWS serverless community builders on the call today, and I don't think we've got a single news article about serverless to discuss in this episode. But maybe one of you can think of a serverless angle.
We can segue it in there.
Yeah, maybe one of you can think of a serverless angle on one of the articles that we're going to discuss. So that's a segue in itself. So as regular listeners to the podcast will know, once a week I curate a list of AWS news, which I share via my weekly AWS News Roundup newsletter, and then Jon selects a subset of those articles that we'd like to talk about on the podcast. So we have, of course, shared such a selection of articles with Sujal before the weekend. And the first of those articles is an article on the AWS News blog, the AWS News blog about how AWS have introduced new capabilities for easier regional planning and faster global deployments. So Sujal, I'm going to come to you first on this article. What are your thoughts on this new region planner that AWS announced last week?
So buying DUI, it is very efficient for architects actually, because it is all architect is centralized. All information is centralized.
Yeah. So what sort of information are they centralizing in this new tool then?
it is efficient and avoid feature parity surprise between regions actually.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess if you're rolling out at scale in different regions, lack of feature parity could be a concern. Is this something you've ever come up against?
Not.
John, something you've come up against?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the
Yeah.
damn time, constantly. So regular podcast listeners will know I rail about this problem, specifically with Bedrock rollouts and with model rollouts, but I rail against this quite a lot, right? And we've had this conversation with some of our other guests in tier 2 and tier 3 regions, and I know there's not really an official tiering sort of concept within AWS, but on the sharp end of it, there absolutely is, because your tier 1 regions is basically most of the US, apart from like North California for some reason, bits and pieces of Europe, Ireland, Frankfurt, I think possibly, and a couple of them in Asia Pac, and then you have your tier 2 regions, which historically London was a tier 2 region. It's more tier 1 now, but historically London was a tier 2 region. And I think there was a specific region for France that came out as a tier 2, and then you had sort of your Sydneys and your Melbournes and those sorts of places, and then your tier 3s ended up being Latin America, Sao Paulo, those sorts of places. And it was always really, really painful. And I understand, just backtracking a bit, I understand why this is, right? Because whilst it's a global service, it's globally distributed, it's globally replicated, yada, 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 yada. All of these things run on hardware, much as a serverless CB like me likes to pretend hardware doesn't exist. It does. I just don't have to worry about it. That's sort of the point. The hardware still needs to be there. Still needs to be in data centers. You still need to rack and stack and run power and cooling and have warehouses for all this stuff and people to look after it and security guards and all sorts, right? All of that's a thing. The result of which is you have this tiered approach where they have more of that more readily available, either because of geo proximity to people or because of space or financial constraint or whatever, right? North Virginia is the ultimate tier 1, but then it's in North America. Supply lines are quite good. I think it's quite close to where Amazon are actually based over in Seattle. They're easy to get kit to. And most of mainland Europe is much the same. Cool. Sao Paulo is probably quite a lot harder. Sydney is a lot harder because you have to ship things over the water and this takes time. Cool. This goes some way to addressing the reality of that situation, where purists like me would like that situation to not exist and for all new features to be available in all regions at launch, because some of them are, if they're sort of software only, but brand new services tend to not be. They're phased rollouts. This sort of addresses the reality, and it's Amazon also almost admitting that, which they haven't done before, that supply lines and shipping exist and that they have to care about these sorts of things, because they haven't really admitted that so far, I think. And this is kind of doing that. It's a brilliant tool. I haven't really dug around in it beyond looking at the article, but it's a really good tool because what it is doing, as Sujal says, is it centralizes all the information that you want. So you can see within the services and then within the features of the services. So it's not just S3 is available. It's S3 mount points, access points, and object lambdas, and metadata, and tables, and iceberg tables, and all these sorts of things, right down to the kind of granular level. What is and isn't available in a given region. And there's 3 states, I suppose you'd put it in. Is it 3? Is it 4? It's 4. So you've got available, which is it's there now. Planning, which is we're working out whether we can put it there or not expanding, which is sorry, you're not getting it. And the screenshot here says Taipei is not getting S3 metadata. Sorry, there must be a reason for that. And then the other sample that they've got is Q1 2026, which I assume in the future there will be further dates out for when they're planning to launch something, and it'll be quarter of a year. Okay, so it's going to come probably somewhere in there, but we don't know where. This is really good. This is really, really good because, as I say, you can then start to plan things like global rollouts and what have you without guessing, out doing the sort of the guesswork of, is this available? Is this not? We're going to have to prove the concept. We're going to have to stand up a copy of it in Seoul, for argument's sake, just to see if it works. I could go and look at it now. Great, cool. That just takes a whole chunk of planning and turns it into a planning exercise, not a debugging exercise, which is great.
So yeah, the purple 2026 Q1, I suppose you would call that planned.
Yeah.
comes after planning. That's when the rollout is planned for. I noticed that you managed to say Sao Paulo several times there without referring to
Sao Paulo.
Yes, that's the one. That's the one. Yeah. Yeah.
Do they have
I knew
caches
you'd have to
there?
eventually. I'm sure they. Well, I don't know. You could use this feature to find out whether Elastic Cache is available in the Sao Paulo region. But I suppose
I'd love it if Ryan Kroonenberg ever listens to this. We love you dearly. We do. We think you're amazing.
he doesn't care. He's now a billionaire after selling his company. So yeah.
He wasn't a billionaire when I met him for all of 2 minutes.
But I suppose as this it seems to be in the builder center where the functionality exists, I guess one could argue that it is serverless.
I mean, I did a talk on this many moons ago now. I'm still kind of a baby in the speaking circuit, but this was Baby John doing this. Is SaaS serverless? And I argue, yeah, it is. It's running somewhere, and you don't pay for it to exist. You just pay for using it. And okay, if you're paying a monthly fee, then maybe it's not serverless because you can't scale it to 0. But this is free. So is everything free serverless? I suppose it might be.
Yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Sujal? Would you class this as serverless, or is that a bit tenuous?
Actually, serverless, I think it will be better.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, let's move on to our second article for this week. And this is an article on the AWS. No, it's not. I thought it was going to be on the compute blog, but actually, it's a mini announcement article. This is an announcement of a new EC2 Auto Scaling feature that EC2 warm pool support for auto. Let me start that again, shall I? EC2 Auto Scaling.
Have you got your teeth in?
No, not firmly. Yeah, I think I've been chewing too much gum today. So the announcement states that EC2 Auto Scaling has announced warm pool support for auto scaling groups that have mixed instance policies. One would infer that prior to this announcement, auto scaling groups could not have mixed instance policies. John, you seem pretty excited about this. So what's getting you shaking your fists in the air? I assume that was in an excited manner and not in an angry manner.
No, this is good because this has bitten me before on customer projects, and they don't. Do they know? They might know. No, I don't think they listen to the podcast. It's fine. This has bitten me before when we've been doing engagements and things, because when you have warm pools, you can't have a mixed instances policy up until this, right? Now, what's a mixed instances policy? A mixed instances policy is where you say, I'm quite happy for my scaling group to have servers that look vaguely like this, right? You can have multiple different sizes, types, families, whatever. And it's a good recommendation if you have rapid scaling kind of needs. And it's what you also tend to do with spot instances. You use mixed instances because the idea is I just need an server, please, to quote Jeremy Clarkson somewhat. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care what it looks like. It's great for things like ECS, where you're managing sort of fleets of servers and things and just containers run. Yeah. Mixed instances is also good for I want to have X number of servers that look like this because these are my permanent servers. Maybe they're reserved instances. Maybe they are dedicated hosts, something like that for whatever reason. But I can flex out into another type of server because, you know, my background processing doesn't have to have this license associated with it, for argument's sake. But you couldn't have a warm pool. Now, what's a warm pool? We like warm pools. I like warm pools because they're a really good way of getting new servers to come online very, very quickly. Now, bringing on an EC2 in an auto scaling group, in an auto scaling group is pretty quick anyway, right? The server comes up within 5 minutes, is usually serving within 10. That's fairly quick in terms of my old sysadmin days, where it would take me a month to have a server available. 10 minutes is brisk. A warm pool, if you do it right, gives you the best of both worlds in that you have your server, it's up, it's configured, it's ready to go, but it's not on, so it's not costing you anything, or it's in hibernate mode, so it's costing you a little bit, or you're paying for the storage, and it'll be online and ready to go in sub 90 seconds quite often. Sometimes I've seen it in under 30 seconds where it's just bang up, which is fantastic, absolutely brilliant for, I need to scale right now. which is invariably what you tend to need to do with auto scaling groups. I find the traffic sometimes comes along, whoomph, and then we need to scale. And historically, we've dealt with that through things like scheduled scaling and just knowing where these patterns are going to happen. And AWS have done some great things with predictive scaling. We've used that as well, and that's quite effective. This kind of helps to bridge that gap a little bit to say that I don't care what server I'm running on. I just need a server that looks somewhat like this. And I'd like to have a few of them kind of preloaded to place. Thank you very much. So I love this. I love this very much.
Nice. What are your thoughts on this, Sujal? I know you're a serverless guy, and this is mostly about servers. But what are your thoughts on this new feature for auto scaling?
So as we are combining warm pools with mixed instance, it's helping to keep a mix of pre-warmed instance which is ready to launch instantly, using the most effective combination on-demand sport or saving plan instance. So we can get both speed and cost saving in same time of. So it is pretty significant because without warm pool, new instances can take 1 to 2 minutes to boot. So warm pool cut that time to second.
Cool. That's pretty impressive. Cold pools seem to be all the rage at the moment, don't they? Plunge pools, that seems to be more fashionable than warm pools. Don't think it's particularly relevant to AWS, but people seem to be
arguably all of AWS EC2 is a cold pool.
Oh, there you go then. Yeah, so that's the fashionable side of things. But people do seem to be liking to plunge themselves into pools of ice on the beach after going into a sauna in a converted horse box. That seems to be the hipster
nervous
thing
system or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess so. Good for your cardiovascular, good for your circulation, not for me. I'm afraid. I much prefer a warm pool than a cold pool. But anyway, on that note, let's move along to our third article for this week. And this is an article on the AWS security blog, which is introducing a new white paper that AWS have recently published on the AWS European Sovereign Cloud. So I think we've mentioned the European Sovereign Cloud before on the podcast, John. But as they are approaching launch, I don't think it's launched yet, as far as I'm aware, but as they are approaching launch, they've put out a white paper detailing what is going to be available with the European Sovereign Cloud. So what are your thoughts on this, John?
Well, I haven't read the whole white paper. I did see Corey Quinn's commentary on this. I haven't read the whole white paper because the last big white paper I read was the GDPR, and honestly, that's scarred me for life. So I don't read them anymore because that was just boring. I think it's necessary because we've heard a lot of noises about sovereign cloud, logically isolated, free from US control, yada, 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 yada. But the takeaway that I had from Corey's take on this was, oh, cool, it's actually still a wholly owned subsidiary of Amazon US Inc. So it's not isolated in the slightest. It's still going to be subject to the US Cloud Act, which was exactly what I thought the whole purpose of this was to avoid. And if you look at China, because it's a China region, Amazon has absolutely nothing to do with it. They work with local partners, and that's, again, because of government regulation. So this feels like it's trying to appease EU lawmakers or trying to kind of pull the wool over people's eyes a little bit, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it'll come along later. Maybe, there'll be enough noise about it that, it's not really independent. Or maybe people don't actually care that much. I don't know. But we've heard a lot of noises about it. We've spoken about it ad nauseum at this point because, I don't know, we're in the EU. You hear EU Sovereign Cloud. I suppose we have to cover it because we're in the EU. But, yeah, I don't know. This is very much still a time will tell. I do think it's a nice touch that they've released it in 3 languages, though, because, it's not just English, even though I don't read German and my French is bad tourist at best.
One of my understandings about this whole European Sovereign Cloud was that it'd be exclusively staffed by European citizens. So people who I guess have European passports, so are EU citizens. And I've seen that from the other side where US government projects are mandating that only US citizens can actually work on those projects, have access to the data, privileged access to the systems, and so on and so forth. So I understood that that's how the European Sovereign Cloud was going to work, but they've not actually mentioned that here as one of the design principles.
It's
Certainly
in
not
there.
in the.
It says that about corporate governance, but no, yeah. So it says
Right,
it specifically
okay,
about
yeah.
corporate governance,
Oh,
but
yes,
not
there we go,
like
yeah,
every
yeah.
single employee.
Yeah. With EU nationals serving as managing directors and an independent advisory board. That's interesting then, because that would not meet with the requirements that I just outlined that the US government have in reverse for those projects. So anybody with privileged access management, I can't imagine the managing directors like me are going to have any privileged access management. So they will have people for that. Interesting one. Sujal, this is, I guess, out of your jurisdiction, being based in India. But we did have another guest on from India at one point, and he was hoping that perhaps there may be an Indian sovereign cloud at some point. Are you seeing much in the way of requirements for that in India?
So it's likely many countries are exploring digital sovereignty. So if the EU European AWS Cloud replicate it for regions like India, where data residency is also a key issue.
So are you seeing a lot of pushback in India on using AWS because of the American ownership, or
Yes.
what types of organizations in India would have that sort of standpoint? Is it mainly government and that kind of thing?
Like workmates. Yes, it's mainly government.
Yeah.
So actually opening the door of European.
Yeah. So do you think it's going to be all government that want to use this European Sovereign Cloud, Jon? Or what are you, who do you think is going to want to use this particular facility?
I think it's government. I think it's going to be government-backed entities. Like German federal police have been quite vocal about this sort of thing, of all people, but, whatever. I think you're going to see European satellite manufacturers and those sorts of people that care about this sort of thing, or people that are in direct competition. I don't know what's going on with your teeth and my tongue today, but it's just because
it's contagious
over the internet. Yeah, geez. So I think it's mostly going to be government and government supported, for lack of a better term, government funded organizations, and these big nation state scale people. I think one of the people being put onto either the board of directors or the advisory committee is the MD of ArianeSat, or some sort of satellite manufacturer out of somewhere in the EU. So it's going to be those sorts of people that are going to be interested in this. I don't think the majority of our customer base, small and medium, are really going to care, because they don't care now. So why would they care? I do find it interesting from a technical perspective how they're doing this. So let's ignore the whole corporate ownership structure for the minute, because in my view, it should be utterly and totally independent. It should not be owned by Amazon at all. It should be in a business by itself, able to fail by itself. And maybe that'll come, because right now they're still building it. So maybe that'll come. I don't know. But if you look at what the outage from a couple of weeks ago showed us, there's still quite a lot of global backbone that runs through North Virginia. And it does talk about a little bit in here about things like the technical ways that they're dealing with that having its own backbone and those sorts of things. So that's quite interesting. I mean, the EU Sovereign Cloud will have, quote, no critical dependencies on non-EU infrastructure, end quote. So that should be quite interesting.
Well, it'd be interesting to see whether or not that is actually true after the European Sovereign Cloud launches and US East 1 has another outage, which doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it does tend to affect things globally. So it'd be interesting to see if that were to happen again in future, whether the European Sovereign Cloud would be affected or not.
If nothing else, this creates a buttload of jobs in the EU that aren't going to be taken by Americans.
Absolutely. Well, certainly at the senior level, it would seem, but hopefully that's going to permeate down through all levels.
It doesn't say it in the article, but if you click through and find it, it does actually say it is going to be wholly EU. So there's a note in design goals is wholly operated in the EU by qualified EU residents, offering the same scale, function, blah, 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 blah. We are gradually transitioning to be operated but exclusively by EU citizens located in the EU. During this transition, we'll continue to work with a blended team of EU residents and citizens located in the EU. So I imagine at the minute they've got American engineers and things helping out, because building a new region is no mean feat. It's a big job to do. But I think once it's built, it will transition out that way, and then we will see about corporate ownerships and things as well.
Maybe they've got British engineers working on it who are no longer in the EU.
I don't know, because we're not EU, and under the terms of Brexit and what have you, you and I can go to the EU, but not for more than 90 days in a 6-month period. That would be quite hard to work full time in a data center 6 months out of, well, just 5 months and 30 days out of a year. Sorry, I'm on holiday.
Absolutely. Let's not start about the holiday thing again.
Yeah. I'm not as bad as the Swiss, the French.
Right, on that note, let's move along to our fourth article for this week. This is probably going to be a bit of geeking out, I'd imagine, because it's not directly related to anything AWS, but this is an article on PC Mag, all about how Amazon is equipping the next underwater cable with robust armoring to prevent cuts. So this is all about a new cable that's being laid called the AWS Fastnet cable, which will run from Maryland in the US to Ireland, transporting over 320 terabits per second. So that's an awful lot of bandwidth going over this single cable. So you can see why they might wish to armor it. So John, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, you nail on the head. This is geek time, because there's no cloud involved in any of this. This is hardware, and it's the complete opposite of my normal kind of standpoint of servers don't exist and I do serverless. Is big cable, because you can't beat a big cable. They're so much fun. So robust armoring. This is where we start talking about geopolitical things a little bit, because there's absolutely been talk of nation state actors with Cyrillic alphabets, and I'm not going to go any further than that because I don't want to get deplatformed, targeting undersea cables. And that's absolutely a risk factor, because these cables are not necessarily hard to find. They're not publicly listed where they are, but if you know where they come out and where they come in again, do you own a map? You could probably work it out, because they're going to take the shortest path possible straight across the ocean. Wonderful. And they will just be dumped on the sea floor. They will not be buried, because have you tried digging a hole inside the Marianas Trench? It's not that doable. It's a rather a long way down, but obviously you're not going to be targeting in those sorts of places. It's fascinating, the level of hardware engineering that has to go through these. And also, you wouldn't think the internet, these wireless transmissions. No, sorry, big cable. Big cable's still going to win. I don't care. Big cable's still going to win. You can't do this sort of level of transfer with satellites. You just can't.
Yeah, obviously you've got much lower latency on fiber than you do with satellite, and big cable always wins in my house too. If I can cable things rather than rely on Wi-Fi, I will. But what are your thoughts on this, Sujal? Do you like geeking out over hardware and cables and that kind of thing? I know it's not necessarily in our day jobs, but without the networks, none of this works. Without networks, there is no cloud. So what are your thoughts on this one?
So I think that the terms of armoring actually, so undersea cables are fragile actually. So a single fishing anchor can cause multi-million-dollar outage. So armoring improves durability and reduces maintenance downtime.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's coming in 2028, this particular cable. I guess it won't be a single point of failure, but given the amount of data that's going to be transferable over it, we might feel it if it were to be severed. Although it does say the example that they give of the 320 terabits per second, enough to stream 12.5 million HD films simultaneously, doesn't actually feel like that much, really, when you consider how many people are actually streaming these days. And it doesn't feel, it's a big number, 12.5 million. But then if you compare that with the population of Europe and imagine how many of those are streaming on a regular basis, not necessarily they're streaming all the content from the US, but it seems to make that big number feel a bit smaller. So
this is the point. It's a backhaul line. It's a backbone line. It's not It's not, because the speed of light is still a thing. Big cable, cool. The speed of light is still a fundamental problem within physics, to the extent that apparently that's evidence that we're living in a simulation, because the speed of light is actually very low, apparently, according to some physics nerds that I know. Because also I'm a physics nerd. Who'd have thought? But this is a backhaul, right? It's not going to get you away from still having to think globally and think regionally at the same time. You can't just go, I'm going to put something in London and it'll go over the big cable into Maryland and that's fine. It will, that will happen, but your latency is still going to be garbage. You're still going to be fighting with other people inside this cable. It's not the only cable in existence, there's lots of others, but you're still going to be fighting for space inside the said infrastructure. And your latency is going to be terrible. I very nearly swore very strongly there. Your latency is not going to be great because the speed of light exists, and the speed of light in a fiber optic cable is nearly the same as it is in the vacuum, which is 3 million kilometers a second, which is, jolly quick, but it's not instant. There is a delay, and especially when you have handshake protocols and things that send things back and forth over the connection a few times to initiate things before things start streaming, you're still going to need to have things in your own region. I mean, we feel this here. If you put things in, and it's not, if you put something in Sydney, you put something in the US, you absolutely feel the latency. It's even bad if you put things in Ireland. I worked on a project a few years ago now. I was going to say recently, but it's not that recently because I've been doing this job for over 3 years now. So about 4.5 years ago now was when I did this. But we built our infrastructure in AWS in Ireland because it was a smidge cheaper than London. But we had an off-platform database, graph database, and at the time Neptune was just not usable. So we used Neo4j, and we had to put that in London because they ran on GCP of all things, and that had to go in London. And because we built in Ireland, every single call to the site that did a database call went from us in kind of the southeast of England over to Ireland to get served. It then made the database call back over the Irish Sea and then jumped back over the Irish Sea again before coming back over the Irish Sea to come to us. We felt that. It wasn't a lot, but 4 hops over we noticed, and it wasn't even that far. So big, thick cable, great. Armoring, brilliant. Protecting it from hammerhead sharks from attacking it or nation-state actors, brilliant. Doesn't solve for your global deployments. You still need to think about them properly.
I think we need a good movie about nation-state actors attacking submarine cables. I'd watch that.
Who would you put in it? Jason Statham?
Well, yeah, it could be, yeah.
Because he did the Meg, didn't he? It's just terrible.
Well, I don't think he could be the nation-state actor, but he could be our hero. Getting killing off the nation-state actors who are trying to.
No, he's done baddies before. He's done baddies before on the Fast and Furious films.
Yeah, he probably doesn't have a very good Russian accent, though. I don't think he's that versatile, is he? So,
No, it's the same character in every film.
Exactly. So anyway, on that note, let's move along to our final article for this week. And this is an article or a column, if you like, on the Register by Corey Quinn, who we regularly mention on the podcast because he is out there everywhere and quite a voice, but cracking cracking LReg headline as usual. I'll just read it out verbatim. Deploying to Amazon's cloud is a pain in the AWS. Younger devs won't tolerate, and they have no need to prove their bona fides. So you can unpick that one a little bit if you like, John, but this is an article all about how complicated it actually is to deploy things on AWS with everything that you need to think about in terms of setting up accounts and organizations and IAM and single sign-on and VPCs and so on and so forth before you can actually start to build anything. Whereas people these days just want to vibe code and ask AI to do it for them or use platforms as a service. Or use AWS partners like Logicata, of course. Get
that in there.
Of course, we very rarely plug Logicata on the podcast, but why not? So what are your thoughts on this, John? I mean, obviously, this is what you do for a living. Do you think it will die out eventually as younger devs are not going to tolerate this level of complexity, or what do you think?
No, I don't think the cloud let me start that again. I don't think AWS is going anywhere. Certainly not until I retire, because I've kind of banked my next 20 to 30 years of employment on the platform, and I don't really want to learn anything else, especially considering that I've agreed to keep learning for my whole whatever. He's not wrong. He's absolutely not wrong. And I say that about Corey quite a lot, because in spite of the fact that he shitposts on LinkedIn and Twitter, and he seems to be delving into madness lately, like he's been sniffing glue, I think, from the tone of various posts. I hope it's intentional, but Corey, if you need anyone to talk to, I don't know any therapists, but maybe find one. It's worrying. But he's absolutely spot on with this. He's absolutely spot on. And this was, okay, go through the article. It's well worth a read because Corey's writing style is fantastic. He does make some very amusing jokes that are very much in line with my sense of humor. You know, CICD nonsense, which is probably some guy named Jenkins who seems to work everywhere. Yeah, cool. Yeah. And things like IAM Identity Center is what SSO is for AWS. It used to be called SSO and they renamed it. And I thought that was mad, but whatever. And then, you know, keys and OIDC and IAM. And we have this with our user group members, particularly Keith, if you are listening. And if you're not, I'm going to send you this episode talking about, I'm just going to grant it star so I'll get it to work. No, don't do that, because then you open problems later. But invariably people do. And I've done it before as well, particularly when I was a new baby-faced engineer before I grew my beard. It was, why doesn't this work? Oh, I'll give it star. I'll worry about it later. And then you don't worry about it later because you move on to something else. I'm not going to talk about GCP. He does in the article. I don't know GCP well enough to comment. But yes, he's absolutely spot on. It is far too hard to get things to work in AWS, right? I struggle in some cases with some things, and I find things I didn't know regularly. And I'm pro certified twice over, right? I've done 6 exams. I've been doing this now for getting on for a decade. And it is hard. It is hard. It's why people that do this for a living are few, far between, and like to leave when things get tricky at their current place of business, because they know they can go somewhere else, because this is hard and you can't find people to do it very regularly. That being said, and he gets to this is a choice. Is it a choice? I don't know that it's a choice is how I'd phrase it. I think that's deliberately combative, which is kind of what you need in a column. So fair enough. Easy deployment isn't a technical impossibility. Vercel is built on AWS, quoting verbatim, and it is. And Vercel deploys very, very, very easily. I've not really used it, but it's very, very easy. Heroku is the other sort of poster child for this. Heroku is actually using Kubernetes on top of AWS, as I understand it. It's run in EKS. You don't know that you're using Kubernetes, let alone AWS. You just use Heroku. It just deals with it for you. Just, there you go run my thing. And it does it really, really very well. It's phenomenally easy. People of my age, because I am getting on a bit, I'm in my 30s. I'm a millennial. I'm not Gen Z. My knees click. My ankles hurt. I've cut my teeth on physical servers occasionally. I've cut my actual fingers and things building hardware. Been around. I kind of have this masochistic attachment to doing it the hard way. Up until recently, I was still writing all my own code, long form. I now do, vibe code and things as and when, and was very annoyed earlier when I couldn't vibe code something because it was just going, I just don't understand. Fine, I'll do it myself. And that annoyed me. But it's not wrong. It's very doable to make it easy, but I don't know if it's AWS that's going to be doing that for you. Because if you look at Vercel, Heroku, AN, other platform, that's an abstraction layer on top of the cloud. And that's where AWS has always struggled, is to build an abstraction layer on top of themselves with these low-code, no-code platforms. They've always struggled with this. I forget the name of it, but they did a no-code platform, and it was terrible. And it was terrible, and they killed it. Yeah. They've always struggled with this.
You've also got things like Elastic Beanstalk and App Runner and various different abstraction layers, but people just don't seem to like them for whatever reason, because I think they feel quite restrictive. And if you want to do something that the platform doesn't do, then you're back to doing it yourself, I guess.
People like me don't like them because I understand how they hang together. Amplify is probably the best sort of platform that you can come up with that AWS have put together, which is serverless. There you go. I told you I'd segue it in there. Amplify is a serverless platform. It builds things under the covers for you. It's API gateways and Lambdas and what have you. And I'm sure there's some servers under there as well, but Amplify itself is serverless. And that works reasonably well, but it's competing against Vercel to an extent, but without the CDN. I think it is competing against Firebase from Google, which again is the same sort of thing, but on top of GCP. And others exist for Microsoft, I'm sure, but I don't know Microsoft well enough. So yeah, this is a problem of AWS's own making. Whether it's a choice or not, I don't know. I think it's a factor of how the company's structured, and they have historically struggled to deal with this problem. But it is a problem that's not going to go away. And if you, enterprising listener, can come up with some sort of platform that allows people to abstract away from AWS but still get all the benefits of it, come find me and I will work with you and give you investment money, because I think that's going to be a winner.
What are your thoughts on this, Sujal? Do you embrace the complexity, or do you wish there were simpler ways of doing things?
So I think a balance is needed because adding more autonomy, creative freedom, and open communication could make AWS more attractive to younger engineers without losing its focus.
So what are the platforms that we've mentioned do you use? Have you worked with Amplify? Have you worked with Beanstalk, etc.? Or do you tend to just go straight in at the nuts and bolts layer and build everything up from scratch?
So go to the straight actually.
Sorry, I missed that. I was just curious if you'd use any of the abstraction layers in AWS to build things, or do you tend to work with the individual components?
No, I didn't.
Okay, cool. Well, on that note, I think we have reached the end of our time for season 4, episode 42 of Logicast.
Is this the meaning of life?
Well, indeed, he's been. I was listening to the radio the other day, and they were talking about Douglas Adams and someone else. I think it was one of his old university classmates. They're doing something at the moment. I don't know if they've got a book out or something like that. Because whenever you hear people talking on the radio, they're promoting something invariably. It's a new book, new show,
He's run out
new
of money,
TV show
so
coming out, whatever. So yeah, they're not just on there for the love of talking about things. They're promoting something.
No, he's run out of money.
But yeah. So anyway, we have reached the end of our season 4, episode 42, which those of you who know about the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy will know that the number 42 is actually the meaning of life. Whether this episode will become the meaning of life or not will remain to be seen. But if you are still with us, you are still listening, thank you very much for listening. If you've enjoyed it, please give us a review or a like. Do tell your friends. We are available to download from wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, if you'd like to take a look at the funny faces we're pulling and the different backgrounds that I have this week, then check us out on our YouTube channel. Thank you, John, as always, for sharing your insights. And thank you very much, Sujal, fellow AWS community builder, for joining us and sharing your insights as well. It's been great to meet you. But that is all we have time for this week. So we will be back next week, I believe, with another episode for you. Until then, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next time.